kind of weird. You see that like different words have different kind of reactions. So the word youth got 187 retweets, whereas the word youthfully only got 21. And you think, well, these are just completely arbitrary. But then you realise that people are waiting for significant moments. So at 2 a.m. on the 9th of February 2013, everywhere tweeted the word sex. And this is a funny word, right? When you're 12 years old or 32 years old, you look it up in a dictionary every time you get a new dictionary. This is a joke, it's funny, it's a silly word that you're not supposed to use or say when you're a child. And you see one of the replies is, and the world rejoices. And this was something that people knew was going to happen eventually. There is a sense of inevitability to this, and yet it got 2,300 retweets because there was this sort of collective observance of this thing which finally happened, and which was kind of like a shared joke between everyone, because you all knew that you were kind of sheepishly finding it funny. So who follows every word, and why do they follow them? I'll do this kind of thing a couple of times where you look at this plot and ask yourself why do people follow it. Well, the thing with every word is that it's a stream of data which is kind of meaningless. It's a very, very large amount of data. But I think it comes back to something called the sublime. So in kind of the 19th century, I think, maybe a bit before, you'd often find quite well-to-do gentlemen from parts of Europe would go on the grand tour around Europe. They visit important cultural landmarks, they perhaps study at some important schools, and one of the other things they commonly do is they would do a walk through the Alps. And part of this was to come to terms with nature. This was something that Victorians really loved. And the idea that you were facing infinity, this is a painting, I believe, of someone through the Alps. It might be a different mountain range. But the idea is that this gentleman in the middle of the picture is faced with his own insignificance in the scale of what he's seeing, and how little he matters. And how, even if he spent his entire lifetime, he probably couldn't walk over all of the ground over the horizon that he's seeing and beyond. And I think there's an element of this to Twitter, and to Twitter bots like Everywhere, because Twitter, Everywhere started in 2007, and it took 7 years to get to the end. And during that time, you notice that you've ended the letter B, and suddenly you're in the K's, and then you're in the L's, and maybe in that time you got married and you moved house, and there's this feeling that this quite vast but inevitable thing is happening that you can't stop. And I think some people follow these bots for that sensation. And I imagine they won't follow the bots that we made this week for that reason. But I think it's important to understand one of the major motivations behind some of these bots. This is my opinion, incidentally. Like, there are lots of people writing about Twitter bots who have different ideas. But then something interesting happened with Everywhere, which was it came to an end. As people were expecting, it came to the Zs, and the Zs went through, and it typed out the last word beginning with a Z, and then something happened. Does anyone know what happened? Yeah. When it got to the end of the Zs, it had run out of words. People were expecting the last word to be Zymergy, which got 816 retweets, and then suddenly Eclair was tweeted. And the reason is that the word list that every word had was in alphabetical order, but it was in a particularly kind of order. And if you know about Unicode and ASCII codes and character orderings, the accented E comes after the Z. It's got a bigger ASCII code, or Unicode, I guess. And people lost their shit. This was the reply to this tweet to Eclair. Now this is happening, and then they slide in with this. WTF, we fell for it, greatest ruse of 2014 confirmed. We emotionally invested ourselves and we were betrayed. This was a big deal because people had an expectation of what the bot was going to do. They believed that they understood this piece of software. Because bear in mind, most of these 87,000 people following it were not programmers. But they felt like they understood what this piece of software was doing, and then they were thrown. And yeah, they felt a bit betrayed. They felt like their understanding had been thrown somehow. So even a very simple bot that was just a feed of data had some kind of cultural impact. And there's been lots of variations on the every X thing. So this is one of my favorites, every color. It generates a random hex code, which is 6 hexadecimal digits. And then it treats the colour that it represents. It's not a great colour here, but you get a feeling for it. It's not doing them in order, like every word. It's actually doing this randomly. People favourite it. 24 people favourited this one. Only 12 favourited this one. It looks nicer on the projector, but actually I prefer this colour. And artists and designers, they favourite these colours. They just appear on their feed once every hour, and it's like, yeah, I can use that colour for something. I kind of like this one. And it's a really odd feed. Like, it's just data. It's pure data. Anyone could have written that. But the idea is interesting. If you want something more grounded, and perhaps more direct, you get more specific, more grammar-driven bots. So random sandwich has a very specific corpus of data that it builds up, and you can kind of see how it works. But what it does is once a day at lunchtime, it generates a name for a sandwich and then a list of ingredients. So the Vancouver is chicken salad en pain de mie, open-faced, with sprouts topped with hoisin sauce. 3 very strange people favorited that. And they're not great ideas because they're purely random. So this bot has no idea of how flavors work together or what are commonly linked together. The name is random. There's no relationship between Vancouver and chicken salad. And so you can imagine how you might improve this for some of the things that you've seen today already, or some of the creative techniques that you might already be aware of. But this bot is still interesting because it's very targeted. People know what to expect when they follow it. They're expecting a very formal definition of a sandwich, as formal as sandwiches can be, I guess. Just one more example along this line. We'll come back to this one later, that's why I want to bring it up now. 3-course meal, very similar thing. Tweets a starter, a main course, and a dessert. So pear lemonade, followed by pickled porchetta, homemade pumpkin pancake, and cucumber salad. And then to finish, cheesy peanut butter panna cotta, which probably is the weak link in that particular meal. But yeah, so this is again purely random. It's really important to understand this. The bot does not appreciate why pickled porchetta might go with cucumber salad, if indeed it does at all. And it's actually quite hard to think of how you might get that kind of data. But people are fascinated by these things, and we'll talk a little bit later, I guess, about why that might be. This is our last, not our last, this is our second to last week. This one was actually suggested specifically for you folks by a researcher I know, art assignment bot. Again, these are completely random, but the interesting thing about this one is that people actually try to fulfill these art assignments. So, produce a digital collage about space due on Saturday, January the 16th. Occasionally people reply to these with their entries. Some of them are kind of impractical, so construct an event about narrative is a bit grand for someone to do for a Twitter bot. But create a Polaroid about your relationship to flight due tomorrow. Someone could do, and what someone suggested to me is that you made a Twitter bot that actually tried to fulfill these assignments, which would be pretty tricky. But it is a way to build on top of existing bots, which is something we'll be coming back to in the latter half of the talk. Just one last, this is the last feed bot. So just to give you an example that bots don't always have to be about randomly generated jokes. San Francisco QuakeBot uses real-world data to tell you when an earthquake has happened in the San Francisco area and where it happened. So if you know people that live in the southwest of Kenwood, California, it might be important to you to find out that a 3.2 magnitude earthquake has just occurred there. And what this does is this transforms this existing data into something that's accessible for other people or other bots. This is much easier to read than the JSON data feed or whatever that's on their website. And it's chunked up, and you can go back to it, maybe even use it in your own bots. So if you want to, for some reason, have your bot linked to real-world earthquakes, this would be a data source that you could use. But these are bots that have real-world impact. This is important to people. People follow this because it has an actual impact on their lives, so it's not like a trivial source of comedy. So that was by far our largest category. And it's the most common one because it's the most basic. All you need is just a source of data and you just spew it out. You don't need any kind of thought whatsoever. So what about more sophisticated bots? So the watchers that search for particular things. This is a bot called Your Valued, and it searches for people saying things like, nobody likes me. And it tweets saying, I like you. Or it tweets them with a little heart. Knowing nobody likes me is what kills me inside. And this bot goes around looking for these tweets and responding to people. And it's not as silly as it sounds. And if you Google for this bot, there's actually a really interesting article, I think, by the bot's creator about what she learned by making this bot and the kind of impact that it had on people. Some people react to it with amusement, but some people seem genuinely touched that something reached out to them, even if it is a bot. This thing identifies itself as a bot, which is really important because you don't want to trick people who are very depressed into thinking that a human has interacted with them when it hasn't really. And there's a similar bot that does the same for hugs. So it just hugs people who says they need a hug, or occasionally retweets tweets relating to hugs. So these are kind of socially aware bots. And we'll see bots later which are absolute arseholes compared to these bots. But these bots are all about observing Twitter and finding things about them, searching for patterns, which is a very programmery thing. I'm sure a lot of you can sympathize with this. So Accidental Haiku looks for bots who looks for tweets which fit the haiku format of 575 syllables. Constantly talking isn't necessarily communicating. I might be at work, but at least I'm not watching Britain's Got Talent. These are quite good. There's no sense of understanding here, so you can see I've cut these out. I've curated ones which I think are interesting. I like to stuff my underpants with croutons and do the crunchy dance. These are yes, but he's also a haiku artist, which I'm sure he's not well known for. So this is interesting because it's searching for structure and looking at it. And it can't appreciate these haikus for being of high quality, but it's just noticing that they exist. Similarly, this bot tweets adjacent tweets which happen to be anagrams of one another. So it retweets, I hope it's not bad man, and about time to abandon ship. And those two are anagrams of each other. This bot got demoted in my talk this morning when I discovered it's curated by a human being. So the bot identifies anagrams, but humans authorize whether they think they're interesting or not. So this one is, you can just imagine a big red cross here where I've disapproved of it. It's not automatic enough. But a better one is the pentametron, which looks for tweets in iambic form. And occasionally you get these nice pairs which actually rhyme. There are other programs which produce sonnets out of these iambic tweets. So nutrition labels ruin all the fun. I want a thunder buddy, anyone. I don't know, there's not much of a connection there, but... So why do people follow watcher bots? Why do they follow bots like pentametron? Well, my best guess here would be that we all kind of crave order in our lives, and we like... I mean, Twitter is kind of fundamentally chaotic and disorderly. So this is a search for One Direction, but in the 3 minutes it took me to wait after this search, 75 more tweets involving One Direction were tweeted. And Twitter is just a mass of different people with different agendas, a lot of spam bots. There's too much there, and it can feel overwhelming if you follow even more than a few hundred people. And I think there's this feeling that some bots like Computational are kind of these little robot caretakers that walk around Twitter and reassure us that something is happening here, and they're kind of tidying it up and putting all these tweets in order. Dogs lie asleep and little children play. Still can't believe the Cowboys lost today. These two people probably don't know each other. Completely unrelated tweets, 1 hour apart, but here they've been put into little rhyming couplets. I don't know. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Obviously, this isn't really why people follow these bots, but I think if you want to look at these bots, this is a function that they have, and it's a function that your bots will probably exploit whatever they do, because they will look for patterns in the data, they will try and understand what they're looking at and make a comment about them. This bot is one of the more infamous watchers. It looks at people writing sneak peek with PEAK, and then it corrects them by reminding them. And of course, it's called stealth mountain. And it's a picture, it's avatar, you can't see it, but it's a little mountain with a ninja suit on. The thing about this is that some people get really angry with this bot. And some people are quite cool with it. This person just backed it. Which is great, really. And there's really this bot doesn't need to exist. But for a lot of pedants, it's probably reassuring that it does. I'm one of those people. I'm not really, that doesn't bother me, but I do think it's funny that someone... So what's the next step up from this? Well, bots that reach out. What about you bots that you can reach out to? Bots that you can do something with. This is one of my favourite bots. It's by Thrice, or Thrice, I guess I call them. Thrice is a natural language grad student in, I want to say, Washington. I apologise if that's wrong. So a sexting, I don't know how well known the concept of sexting is, but it's the idea of texts that you send your partner that are a bit kind of naughty and euphemistic, and you're talking about things that you'd like to do to them. Well, what WikiSex does is it uses a website called WikiHow, which is a website that lists tutorials on how to do things. How to be calm. Part 1 of 3, changing your outlook. Be kind to yourself. Being calm begins with being self-loving, which does not mean being self-absorbed, etc., etc. So these are tutorials about like how to bleed a radiator, how to make electronic music, how to become a novelist. And what WikiSex does is it takes them down and then reformats the pronouns involved to try and make them sound euphemistic. So I take my inventory of my hobbies as you find my place, such as a beach or state park that doesn't have cell phone reception. Or I obtain my brewer's license, you choose one or more yeast strains. So this is clearly about brewing your own beer, but it's been twisted in such a way to make it sound slightly euphemistic. But the thing about this bot is that it talks back to people. So this is an exchange between WikiSex bot and a real person.
You think?
No, definitely in this case. Although that will come in a few slides' time. I desperately find my genre I'm absolutely comfortable writing about. So this is clearly about becoming a novelist. To which the person replies, don't worry, I very much want to write about you. And there's something kind of performative here, because this person knows that the author of this bot is probably reading these exchanges. So they're kind of playing along for a reason, but ultimately they are talking to a bot. Now what I want you to think about here, notice WikiSex response. I turn your valve on the service hose. So this is just another tweet. All of these are just generic tweets. They're not related to the reply. So how would WikiSex actually pick up on, because this person is really trying hard to play along. So WikiSex says, I pick my favorite type of cardio. And the human quite cleverly comes up with your heart rate is elevated. They're trying to play along, but the bot can't play back with them. So what would it take for this bot to try and play along with them and pick up the context of what's being said? And at the end they say, I decide how you will assemble your magazine and choose my final aesthetic. And to which the human just replies, ready to go to print, question mark, and then the conversation ends. It's really cute. And the thing I like about WikiSex is that it picks its battles really carefully. And I just wanted to really emphasize that here. So the thing with euphemisms is they almost always work. So this is a very common joke in sitcoms, is that someone will make a very generic statement, and you automatically, you're primed to interpret it as euphemism. So this is a line from Frasier. They're talking about a character who's supposed to have played the field. Ross has squeezed more fruit than Tropicana. That doesn't mean anything. Like, that could mean absolutely whatever you want it to mean. But because the audience are primed to expect euphemisms, these things become funny as a result, and the audience is automatically on your side. And that's why this person was willing to go through these chains, because they want to see what happens, and they want to have that creative moment of formulating a response. So think really carefully about the kind of domain you're going to be working in today. Okay, something simpler, more classic, definitely kind of first generation generative. Distracted Genie by Darius Cassidy, tiny subversions. So this looks at people who've said, I wish I had something, and then it misinterprets it by replacing one of the words with a rhyme. So, I wish I had a time machine, and the idea is it's that classic joke of the genie mishearing the wish. So look, I'm very busy, but sure, have a crime machine, why not? And it's endless tweets like this that intentionally misinterpret what that person's trying to say. So very simple linguistic trick, but quite effective. Right. This is another really interesting bot that had a bit of a cultural moment, Olivia Tater's. I believe the author of this bot is Rob Dudden, I'm not sure. So this attempts to sound like a generic teenager. So why can't I just have a car? I would honestly get all dressed up and go on a date, but that's not going to happen a lot. So some of these tweets are, I believe, kind of generated using Markov models, which is a text generation technique, and there are other things used. The interesting thing about Olivia is that it will proactively tweet at its followers. So if you follow Olivia, it becomes part of your feed, much like your actual friend. Olivia will just insert itself into some of your conversations and just tweet at you. So something interesting happened when another similar bot had this experience. So Olivia says, if there's a season 5, Ross will obviously be dead by the time you get back. And then another bot interjects and starts talking to it. And they start a conversation. So it's just more noticeable with her because the accents are so different. Different are soft. And then this happens. It has two different VOA branches trying to get a temporary debit card. VOA is Bank of America, which is a bank in America. Bank of America decides that this is a customer in trouble. One of the people manning their Twitter account pitches in, we're able to get the problem resolved. If not, I'd like to help. Unfortunately, they're talking to a bot, so the bot replies with, why do people break up? Now, this poor person is being paid to monitor. At this point, like, imagine that you are this person. This is a potential customer, for all you know. And how do you respond to this? So they very kindly just repeat, please let me know if you need any help. To which the bot says, have you seen them kiss? But this is interesting because it shows how these bots, if they're constructed in the right way, they can kind of insert themselves. If they're not presented as bots, they just become part of the fabric of Twitter. And there are lots of people who just indiscriminately search for Twitter users. And it's interesting to think about how the bots you're going to make might react in that kind of situation. So I think this is a nice example. AlgoPop is an amazing website which you should check out, algopop.tumblr.com. It records these kind of unusual interactions between technology. I really like it. So why do people follow Olivia Taters? If you work in AI, the worst thing to happen in human culture in the last 10 years was the film Her, because all of your friends came up to you and said, isn't that like what you do, or etc., etc. So for context, my day job is building a piece of software which has a woman's name. So obviously I got this for about 6 months solid. If you haven't seen the film Her, it's about a guy who falls in love with his operating system. I think it's set in the near future. His operating system has a woman's voice. It speaks very fluently in English. And the thing with a lot of these bots is that they're kind of like mirrors, in a sense, of certain aspects of human behavior. And they don't always follow these human behaviors. Olivia is pretty unrealistic in many ways. So English is very unstructured, or in some cases just cribbed off other people. But people like this sense of watching a bot attempting to do something. Interacting with a piece of artificial intelligence software. It plays into all kinds of sci-fi dreams, everything from the sinister nature of HAL in 2001, all the way through to things like this lovey-dovey relationship between Mr. Phoenix and his operating system. And people kind of dream of talking to intelligent machines. They dream of having philosophical discussions with them. They dream of having a Blade Runner moment where they're trying to work out if someone's human or not. This is a Twitter version of a very famous AI called Eliza, which was designed, I believe, to be kind of a therapy bot. It would talk to people, ask them open questions. I found this exchange with it. Someone asks, are you still operating, Eliza? And Eliza asks what its feelings are. Intimidated, this person's got a homework assignment and they've started really late. And Eliza says, can you elaborate on that? And this person is intricately aware that Eliza is a bot, but it's responding very seriously. Like, I've got this deadline, it's 10 PM already, I've got all these bots to go through. And the bot says, well, would you prefer if there was only one bot instead of 1,000? This is kind of chance that it's picked this out of its previous sentence. And this person says, you're right, it's better to have loads of bots than not enough. Thanks for spinning this positively. This person is talking to an algorithm that it probably intricately understands is lying to it. But it's about playing along with this feeling of interacting with software. And I'm telling you now that no matter how creative or uncreative your bots are, how clever or unclever they are, the reactions that you get from people will vary from people who completely play along with your bot and are 100% with you, and on the other hand, there will be people who are trying to pick it apart, they want to know how it works, they want to break it, they want to understand the algorithm, they want to know how you've done it. And you have to try and bear both of these groups in mind as you're writing your bot. Because for every person who's chatting like this, there will be another person who's very angry with you, angry with your bot, hates you and thinks your work's awful. Right. So a subclass of these bots that are interactive are image bots. This is actually new to me. I only came across these the other day. They're very simple, but as programmers, I think you'll appreciate their simplicity. You give them an image, and they do something to the image, and they give you the image back. So bad PNG does these kind of glitch art reinterpretations of images. It kind of poorly encodes them in PNGs. CGA graphics runs them through this kind of old CGA filter to make them look like they're in a different resolution and color palette. Image blur applies different blurring processes. And the thing I like about this is that it uses hashtags to tell you some of the algorithms that it's used, or some of the parameters that it's used. Which is interesting because you might want to use these as processes as part of a larger bot. And in fact, someone's done that. This is thrice again. So they made this bot which gets given conversations between two image bots where they've constantly tweeted a photo back and forth, and then it turns them into animated GIFs, which look a bit like this. So each frame of this GIF is part of the exchange between the bots. So you start off with this image, it ping-pongs back between two different images, and you end up with this image. And this is fairly inconsequential, but this kind of bot, with the input and the output, I think is a really good format for kind of sub-bots, smaller kind of bots that you might make this week on your way to building a more creative one. Right, so feats. These are the Twitter bots where people climbed the mountain because it was there. And I like a lot of these bots. They're not, like, in some cases you might think, well, this wasn't super impressive, but they're very unusual as Twitter bots. Do people know what vines are? This was a phrase that described some parts of social media. Okay, some nodding heads. So vines were 6-second videos that you could record on your phone. And you could record them in multiple takes. You could record like 1 second and then move your camera and record another second of video. This bot by Darius Kazemi scrapes together vines with similar tags and then plays a bit of music over the top. So here's one of them. This is for cat. These are really surreal. So it's chance that most of these videos had cats in them. Obviously they were tagged with cat, but as you saw, there was a woman on a TV show it looked like, and this clearly had nothing to do with cats. So it's chance that this was mostly cat themed. The music was pretty much randomly chosen as far as I know. I could be wrong about that. But it shows you that Twitter bots don't have to just be text, as long as you can think of ways to make them understand these different media. So so obviously this requires image processing, and in this case it would require video processing, which is even harder. But you can imagine bots that do things beyond just text, and there'll be other examples of bots that do this later. I don't know of any bots that only produce sound, actually, but there are lots of bots that produce images or animated images, and I'll give you an example of a bot that I think will work on later that uses images. Here's another one for it's strange. It's an unusual medium for Twitter bots. And speaking of unusual mediums or media, reverse OCR randomly draws lines on a canvas until an OCR, so a character recognition, handwriting recognition software, agrees that it writes a certain word out. So this image here, does anyone want to hazard a guess at what this was recognized as?
Swimmer.
Yeah, you saw it. Knew I should have edited that out. Count on you. This is swimmer. Okay, so here's what I got. I don't get the S here. I think there's a W here. I think that's a definite W. The I, maybe there's a second M here. I think it's a bit generous. There's definitely an M here. I think there's an E. I think I could pass that as an E, and this is quite R-like. I'll give it the R. This does not need to exist. This does not benefit anyone, but it is a curio, and it exposes people to an unusual question and then answers it, which I think there's definitely something valid about that kind of thing. What about games as a medium for Twitter bots? Lights Out is a very common kids game that you can get with a little electronic toy. Someone wrote a Twitter bot that plays Lights Out, and it remembers the state of the game, tells you how many moves have gone through it. You can reply to it to give it the move that you want to make, and you try and solve the Lights Out thing. So I think that's really cute. It's really self-contained. There's a similar one which we'll come on to in just a sec, which does the same for chess. Or if you want to go really, really niche, this is a bot which extracts scenes from the TV show The Wire and makes them GIFs, which it then posts periodically. This was related to a bot, that is the whole thing. It was related to a bot which I believe was posting an entire movie one frame at a time until it was subject to a takedown notice for illegally distributing the movie one frame at a time per minute on Twitter, which was certainly an unusual takedown notice. And so to go back, this was supposed to be next to the lights out bot. These two bots play chess against each other. So later on I'm going to bang on about building bots that interact with other bots. I got a commentary bot that noted the relationship in this game between these two bots, or referred back to famous examples, or commented on the quality of the play, or just insulted the players, or just was really bored and started ad-libbing about other things. But these are curious. People do follow both of these bots. They're interested in chess. They want to know what's going to happen in the game. They want to predict it. And this is done, I believe, by pasting an image of the existing chess game. So those were kind of, we wanted to do it because we wanted to see if it was possible. Right, mashups. We're getting there. We're almost through this first part. So. This bot is not a bot. This is just to prime you for the next one. But this is one of my favorite Twitter accounts. It's called Kim Kierkegaardashian. So it's a mashup of actual tweets from Kim Kardashian, which I spelled wrong, with quotes from the philosophy of Soren Kierkegaard. Hair by Rob Racine, makeup by Lucia Pieroni, inner strife and disharmony by some unknown thing I do not even dare to try to know. Back in NYC for just a few hours, I persist in trying to find myself by plunging further into the world. This is absolutely brilliant. Clearly this is the work of a human curator, although you could imagine building a bot that was clever enough to understand the contrasts of play here. But some of the contrasts are so perfect. I'm so bored of internet rumors. They continually misconstrue as pride, behavior intended to disguise my anguish. And there's a play here because people understand who Kim Kardashian is, and the contrast of the depression, but also the extreme sophistication of the language, because Soren Kierkegaard was translated into a kind of overly complex English in some cases. So Latour Swag tries to emulate this style by mashing up French philosopher Bruno Latour with tweets tagged with a kind of swag style. And you can see, so the top, I gave another example from Kim Kardashian. The despair of weakness is the despair of not wanting to be oneself. Open brackets, new haircut alert, close brackets. And you can see that the Latour swag is not as successful, but it is trying to get there. The problem is it doesn't understand the tweets it's mashing together. Like the microbe itself was an agent endowed with unity, and I didn't even know how to do that to begin with #swag. Or provided there is also no interruption, no break, no gap, and my squad are killing it. #go, #swag, #chillin'. So you can see that it's getting there. It doesn't have the beauty of Kim Kierkegaardashian in how it contrasts the two different sources of data. And maybe there's something in these language tools that you've got to help you do this kind of thing. Another very famous mashup is two headlines, which takes news headlines and transposes certain important parts of the headlines with content from others. So here's proof that it snows in Volkswagen passenger cars. Was probably supposed to be here's proof that it snows in Hawaii or something like that. But occasionally they become a little bit more poignant. Who dies at the end of Gaza Strip? Not every fairy tale has a happy ending. It's clearly been swapped out the phrase Gaza Strip for like the name of a movie. But that's got a bit of extra weight to it. As a result, you get like three favourites. We have no homeland. Santa Claus dissolves as exiles flee. And this was tweeted on December 2nd, so that's why Santa Claus was in the news, but it also kind of is an interesting thing. But it feels slightly surreal, but you could also imagine the news story that comes as a consequence. And speaking of that, I'll come back to that later. Another mashup that I think is interesting in the way it uses its source data. Real human praise. So if someone noticed, again, I think this is Rob Dubbin, I don't know why I'm so bad at attributing stuff to him. I'm pretty sure this is him. He noticed that lots of blogs are being spammed by right-wing spam bots that were just constantly praising Fox and right-wing politicians and things like that. So what he did was he went onto Rotten Tomatoes, which is a film review website, and started to detect positive sentiment phrases. And then replaced things like actor and film with words like news anchor and the names of Fox News shows. And so you end up with generic praise statements that appear to praise Fox News. Sean Hannity's solid turn in a more life-size role is the centerpiece of this darkly haunting Western. Or one of the most bittersweet productions of Kabuto's career. So it's supposed to produce kind of artificially positive praise in the style of a spam bot. But I think the unique idea of combining film reviews and then repurposing them from another idea is not something I've seen elsewhere. So it's about an unusual data source being used to an interesting effect. You can see the categories are getting smaller as I get more and more specific. Bot on bot. This is really important, and I'm going to explain to you why I think this is so important later. So Red Scare bot looks for people tweeting phrases related to socialism and communism, and retweets them with scathing comments about the folly of communism, a fool's paradise retweet, or secret socialist, that's bullshit, progressive liberal democrats equals socialism. But notice that it can't actually detect whether someone's being positive or negative about communism. So look at this last tweet here. This person actually hates socialism, but the robot Jay McCarthy has still decided to quote me. Anyway, Darius Kazmi was a bit annoyed with this bot, so he wrote a bot intended to bait out Red Scare bot, which he called Red Scare Honeypot. So these are kind of generic tweets. I don't know whether it searches for tweets that already have those words in them or whether it inserts them in. But my son was occasionally communist between hamburgers, which is the best that can be expected. And Robot Jay McCarthy instantly jumps on that tweet. So this bot was designed to screw with another botmate and disrupt that bot. And you'll find out why later. Museum bot was another work of Darius Kazmi. It takes articles from the Metropolitan Museum. I think I've got that wrong here. I said the Museum of Modern Art. They have a great catalogue online with images, and it takes the title of a piece and an image and a link to it, and it pastes it online. When I saw this, I thought, I really like this, and I'd love to have a bot that somehow interacted with this, because it's such a perfect stream of data. Like each tweet is interesting in its own way, and the link is really fascinating to click on and learn more about. So I wrote Appreciation Bot. And what Appreciation Bot does is it waits for Museum Bot to post something, and then it tries to generate a tweet that sounds like a kind of pseudo-intellectual comment about the piece based on its title. So the most important idea at work here is that of the chapel in which a priest exists. So this was a model of a priest with the zodiac symbol. And this uses ConceptNet, which is an interesting source of information, and Metaphor Magnet by our own Tony Veal, which is an amazing online resource, to make these comments. I like this one here. This was standing male nude, and it's honed in on the word standing, and it says, you can imagine the kind of bust that might have inspired this one. And I like the idea that somehow Appreciation Bot thought that the ancient Greeks made most of their statues by waiting for public transport. And one person has favorited that, though he's a friend of mine, so it's an account. So these bots talk to each other, and they were made with each other in mind. And I'll come back to in a minute why I think it's interesting or worthwhile, and why you might want to think about that today. We are already near the end of this phase now, so bear with me. So one of the last categories is statement bots, bots that have something to say or something to try and make you think about. So this is an article from the New Scientist called Twitter Bot Grows Up and Takes on the World. On the 18th of July, someone in the Russian government edited Wikipedia, pointing the finger at the Ukrainian military for the Malaysia Airlines accident. How do we know this? A Twitter bot caught him in the act. There's a series of bots called the kind of wiki edits bots, and they monitor IP addresses from government buildings, like this one, which is the House of Parliament. And it tells you when Wikipedia articles have been edited anonymously from within those buildings. So someone edited the list of steam locomotives in Slovenia Wikipedia article from the Houses of Parliament. God knows why they were editing that incredibly specific article. It probably wasn't for malicious reasons, they probably are just interested in it. You get like minor Star Trek characters. Someone in the House of Parliament really likes Star Trek, and they keep editing those pages whilst at work, which I find endlessly amusing. But then every now and again, you get something which is actually like significant. This is politically significant. This was just after a major international incident. So these bots are concerned with factual information, which maybe is not so interesting for creative purposes, because we want to kind of distort reality or do things with reality, provide alternatives. So what about this? NSA Prison Bot, an experiment in speculative surveillance, that's what it describes itself. So this tweets imagined observations by the NSA. So it says things like, the Twitter user Joel King mentioned Basque separatists on Twitter and says flag, as if this country was being flagged up. Wyatt Maggio mentioned eco-terrorism. Mrs. Wino Waters of Ericsburg, Ohio, logged into Office 365 from these coordinates. And none of these things are real, they're all made up. They're based on fairly obvious templates. After a while, you see how they're being made. But there's a reason why these bots are interesting, and I'll do this after I show you this one. This is another one called NRA Tally. This tweets fictional shootings throughout America, and then contrasts it with a stop response from the NRA, the National Rifle Association. So 11 moviegoers shot dead in South Carolina with a 7.62 AK-47. The NRA reports a 5-fold increase in membership. 9 restaurant diners murdered in Garden City, New York with a 9mm Glock. The NRA says blood is the cost of freedom. The purpose of these bots is to act as kind of memento mori or meditative insertions into your Twitter feed. So the idea of memento mori was this painting is supposed to show you life on the left with the flower, death with the skull, and the passage of time. And it was the idea that you would carry around reminders of the fact that you are mortal and that one day you're going to die. And this was a big thing during slightly more depressing times. The Victorians, funnily enough, were really big on it. But I think these bots follow similar purposes. You insert this into your Twitter feed because you want a reminder that these things happen regularly. And you don't want to just forget about it when the media is no longer having a storm. You want every few hours to be browsing Twitter and just be reminded that the NSA is watching what you do on social media. And if they could, they would be reading all of your emails if they aren't already. And I think those bots are interesting as statements because they are intending to convey quite a strong message through this technological medium. And I really like that. Right, just a few bots which are run by humans, so they're not bots. I've just said the word bots so many times this talk, I just lost it. Right, Google Poetics. This was really, really popular, 60,000 followers. Google autocomplete, people noticed that it does interesting things. There are people in this room that noticed it did interesting things as well, but their response was different. This hand curates autocomplete to turn them into poems. And the idea is that, it's supposed to be kind of found poetry, and look at what Google is saying. This year I didn't go to school, didn't work, didn't die, didn't bloom. But then we realize that it's not just these being curated. The author is actually editing them. He's not even true to what Google autocomplete is actually saying. So this one says, I have loved you for 1,000 years with an everlasting love to the point of madness. But that's not what Google autocomplete says. It repeats the start of this phrase over and over again, which kind of breaks the flow. So this is intensely hand-curated, it's intensely edited, and it has this kind of slightly icky quality to it that you don't want from a bot. You want to avoid this kind of curation. You want to seek ways of replicating this with algorithms, to give them the intelligence to understand that this is a snappier poem than the Google autocomplete that's beneath it. So that's a minor moan. But this is the culturally important one. This is the really, really interesting one. So Horse eBooks, 195,000 followers. It started off as a Markov text generator that was run on ebooks about horses. So it would come up with these non-sequitur phrases that were just, I don't even think it was Markov actually, I think it was literally just lifting sentences from ebooks about horses actually. I believe the idea was to advertise them. And people started following the bots. And they liked it because every now and again it would tweet these kind of weird things that sounded maybe slightly strange, maybe slightly real, maybe a human could have written them. They were slightly like badly translated English on non sequiturs or pseudo-philosophical. Smell irresistible and save yourself. This was the kind of strange phrases that people were fascinated by. And they were fascinated because they thought it was a bot. Then they discovered that it was actually been bought by 2 artists halfway through its lifetime. And the artists had continued to mimic the bot. And all of these tweets are in fact made by those 2 artists. And people were really, really angry. Your art project effing sucks. Rest in peace. And then what I love is this was on the 27th of September, this has been revealed. On May the 16th the following year, someone, apropos of nothing, comes back just to tell them how much they hate them. So in our field of computational creativity, we often find that people are angry when they find out that what they thought was a human was in fact a piece of software. This was an example of the opposite. People had engaged with this aesthetic of artificiality, of this bot talking to you through broken English and not really meaning anything. And they discovered they were being tricked by a human. It was the reverse. It was humans pretending to be software. And it's interesting because it shows this culture that you're about to wander into head first, of very strange people that have a very strong attachment to these pieces of software that you're going to write. So look forward to that. Right, I apologise for having thrown so many bots at you all at once. I want to give you a moment to just exhale, take a few minutes, and when we come back, I'm going to ask you, of those bots, which ones do you think is there the most untapped potential to extend them? So when you look at the concepts of them, what do you think, man, I could really turn this into something even more creatively interesting, a second generation bot in turning words. So yeah, maybe talk to the person next to you, or I'm not going to force you to interact with people you don't know, I realise that's scary. And then we'll come back in a couple of minutes and I'll ask you something. I won't force any of you to do this kind of cheesy interaction thing. Does anyone have anything to throw up? Are there any bots who immediately thought, man, I could extend that right now? Like, I would love to do that. I won't force anyone to do that, exactly. Right, okay, let's move on.
No, I was also going to share something. I like your value bot.
Okay.
Because it directly interacts with someone and actually could have an influence on their life, even though it's a bot, or on their feelings. And you can easily expand it with like signs of encouragement, like someone said, oh, I have a hard test tomorrow, hey, you can do it, bro.
Okay.
Something like that.
Maybe some understanding of context.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I like that. I think this is quite undervalued because a lot of these efforts in curbing, for instance, like serious stuff like suicide, requires deep human involvement. And if there was, I mean, it's a bit dangerous to put it onto an algorithm's shoulders. Tony, you were going to say something.
Sleep people get automatically learn other on stuff. Not a problem. Pretty good.
Or words that people are unsure about and try and convince them as well. I can't like to do that as well. I think you'll find it's separated. Just constantly follow around pissing off people. Right, you've weathered the storm of 1,000 Twitter bots at the speed of light being blasted into your eyes. Now I'm going to talk to you in a kind of shorter segment about building them and things that you might like to think about and unusual things that are unique to the culture of Twitter bots. So the first, I need to apologise for this section because this section owes a lot to Darius Kazemi. He wrote a great post called Basic Twitter Bot Etiquette. So I'm going to go through some of the rules that he laid down, and then I'm going to tell you why you might want to break them. Rule number one, don't mention people who haven't opted in. And the way Darius quotes this is, Red Scare Bot is an asshole. Because it infects people's Twitter feed. They're having a conversation about something, they bring up socialism for some reason, and suddenly you get this mention, this robot has broadcast you to all of its 12,000 followers, and to some people this is extremely intrusive. This is not something you want to do. And Darius was actually at the harsh end of this. He had a bot called Professor Jocular, which was suspended for sending multiple unsolicited mentions to other users. I thought I had a... Yeah, okay. So this is what it used to do at the top. It doesn't matter what the bot does, it's kind of, it tries to comment on people's jokes, but it used to quote them because Darius didn't want to appear like he was stealing the person's joke. And what he ended up having to do was remove the at so it doesn't actually explicitly mention them anymore. And this is just an ethical kind of manners thing you may or may not want to do. Talking about, I'm pretty sure this shouldn't be here. I'm going to skip past it. Now, rule number two, don't follow people who haven't opted in. There's probably no reason why you want to do this, but it's a classic spam bot technique. You want to advertise to people, you've got your business. If you follow someone, they're probably going to read the description of your account just because you followed them. And it's kind of a pretty spammy thing to do. But there aren't really many bots that need to follow someone. Following someone doesn't really do anything unless they've already followed you. So this probably won't be a concern. Don't use a pre-existing hashtag. I'm going to show you how I broke that rule later. But this is, again, a very common spam bot thing. Top trending tweets, top trending hashtags, lots of bots copy and paste multiples of them into a tweet and then give you a link to something they want to advertise. So people are searching for these hashtags and suddenly they see, oh, pay me $50 and I'll give you 100 followers. And this is classic spam bot techniques. People hate this, but again, it's something that you need to think about whether you want to subvert or not. This one's very easy. Don't go over your rate limits. Obviously, Twitter will jump on your head if you do so, but it's really easy to check that you're doing this. There are ways in the API that you can check if you're going over your limits. But if you make your bot interactive, which means that other people can tweet at it to get a response, you need to keep an eye on this because you might get like one a day, and then one day you'll get 500 of them in the space of half an hour, and Twitter will throttle you and shut you down for using too many tweets. So think about whether this is going to be an issue for your bot. It may not be. Keep an eye on it. Number 5, this is my own one. Twitter is not your friend, and by Twitter I mean the corporation, not the website. You know by which I mean the people running the website. Here's a great little example from a blog post called by, oh dear, Leonard Richardson, I think. At the top is a Twitter account called Debit Card, or Need a Debit Card. And what it does is, it looks for people who are posting photos of debit cards on Twitter. In some cases, both the front and the back of the card, so you can see the security code. And it retweets them. And it has about 17,000 followers. And the description of the bot, I think, is something like, please stop posting photos of your debit cards. And if you look at some of these tweets that it's retweeting, the replies are things like, thanks for the free MacBook, or I've just had 10 pizzas sent to my flat. So this bot is doing something quite nasty. This bot is called Cancel That Card. And what it does is, it waits for debit card to retweet it, and then it calmly and quietly tweets at that user and says, hi, I saw your credit debit card photo, you should cancel that card, more info here. One of these bots was suspended by Twitter. Can anyone tell me which one and why? And why?
Maybe mentions.
Exactly, it's mentioning the users. Yeah. The top one is retweeting. Everyone wants to be retweeted. This is part of the social network. Yay, spreading my influence throughout Twitter. The second one is, this is unsolicited contact. No one wants that. So this bot has been suspended, and that doesn't exist anymore if you go to that Twitter website, whereas this one is still going strong, still retweeting people's debit cards, and Twitter thinks it's great. So probably you won't run into this, but think very carefully about how Twitter's going to judge your bot. Rules can be broken, and here's how. We've already seen examples. Your value explicitly contacts people who don't necessarily have asked to be contacted. And you might think, well, how is this bot still going? And the answer is, I don't know. It's still tweeting as far as I can tell. You can see this was 9 minutes before I took this screenshot. I could be that sometimes it's about the response to the bot. So in one case, the author of Cancel That Card said that someone asked their followers to mass report this Twitter account for spam, and that could be an influencing factor in what caused it to be suspended. So it might just be about how nice your bot is, and it sees whether it gets banned. What about disrupting existing hashtags? I created this bot. There's been a thing going on for the past 4, 5, 6 months called Gamergate. Gamergate is a delightful excuse to harass various people in the games industry, threaten them with death, drive them from their homes, try and get them fired from their jobs. It's really jolly. All in the name of the noble cause of video games. Someone wrote this very witty article where they tried to point out how silly it was by quoting these tweets about video games and replacing them with the names of playground games, like Hopscotch. And I thought it was great, and it occurred to me that you could do this automatically. So PlaygroundGate goes on to the Gamergate hashtag, and it finds tweets, and then it replaces the words like gamer with Pass the Parcel player. So it says, proud to be a Kiss Chase player. Because people are being proud to be gamers, which was kind of a little bit silly, but this kind of parodizes it, and it is intentionally using this hashtag to try and disrupt it and get in the way of people using it. So it's kind of like it was a statement. I shut the bot down for various reasons, which I can tell you later if you want. But there might be reasons why you want to use existing hashtags. You might want to get involved. If you don't want to know the ending to Twin Peaks, please look away from this following slide. 3, 2, 1. This is a bot called Enjoy the Film. It searches for people saying that they're about to watch certain things, like Twin Peaks, and then it tweets at them telling them the twist ending. And some of the time it doesn't catch them out, but this one is great. You can see the response down here. I don't know if everyone can read it. This person had their day ruined by this bot. And the thing is, I was talking last night to a few people about this, and I said, you didn't really need to make this bot. The concept of this bot is funny enough. It doesn't really need to exist. But the fact that it does is a reminder that not everyone making bots are necessarily nice people. And there is something really horrible about this. And if you want a creative twist on this bot, the one that I suggested, which we were talking about last night, was one that invents false endings to these things using data from IMDb, and then tries to convince people that that's actually the real ending. So then they get temporarily insulted, but then they're all right when they actually watch it. If you're scared about Twin Peaks, you can look up that. So rules are meant to be broken, but what I would tell you to do is try to punch up. And what I mean by that is this. This is from a blog post called Leonard Richardson, who coincidentally is the creator of Beautiful Soup, which is part of, I believe, a contributor's pattern, I think. Judged by your first slide, is it an inspiration to the pattern? I'm not sure. You mentioned it on the very title slide.
His software is good.
Our pattern is miles ahead of some of the stuff that Beautiful Soup does, but this was actually something that I used before I knew about pattern to make Twistbots. There is a general rule for comedy and art: always punch up, never punch down. We let comedians and artists and miscellaneous jesters do outrageous things as long as they obey this rule. And what he means by this is, if you are a guy like Jerry Seinfeld, so a white guy, middle class, living in America, it's okay if you insult yourself. People love that. It's very self-deprecating. It's great. You can insult aristocracy, bankers, people well, people higher up the chain than you, your boss, the audience's boss, maybe even the audience, because the idea is that you're there to serve them. They're kind of asked to be insulted. But you need to be careful when you start punching down. And that's why we feel slightly uncomfortable sometimes when people make jokes about the poor, people that we consider to be stupider than us, people that we consider to be less well off than us, or in positions in society which are maybe less advantageous to us. And so you need to be careful when you're making bots which do slightly dangerous things. And Leonard in particular cautions you to remember who you are. He says if you're reading this, and this goes for everyone in this room, you're already looking for loopholes to this rule, and that's okay. Hackers and artists and comedians are always attracted to the grey areas. But remember, your bot is an extension of your will. And if you're a white guy like me, most of the grey areas are not grey in your favour. One day, Appreciation Bot tweeted this: "The Russian in this piece has the feeling of a raving Nazi just under its surface. This really makes me feel optimistic." I didn't notice this tweet, but someone emailed it to me to point out that it had happened. And if I'd seen this tweet, I probably wouldn't have thought twice about it, but this person felt slightly awkward or offended by it. And I felt really bad, and I wrote a blog post discussing it and thinking about it, and I have to make changes to this bot to make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen again, because I feel like I am responsible for what this bot does to some degree. And again, these rules are there to be broken. You may not feel this way, but I'm just cautioning you that people will see your bot as an extension of you, and these things can happen when you start using unexpected data. And a lot of the data you use is actually quite clean and sanitized this week, and I imagine will be pretty safe. But just have a think about the kinds of things that you do. As an example, here's a bot called Just You Then. There's a very common pattern on Twitter where people say retweet if. And this bot looks for tweets which contain that phrase that have never been retweeted. And then it quotes and replies saying, just you then. So, retweet if you meditate. No one retweeted it, so it's kind of sarcastically tweeted it. But every now and again, it does something and you think, you got a little bit close there. Retweet if you're from Asia. Just you then. And the problem is, we don't know anything about this person. This person might have just moved to a new country, they might be kind of proud of where they're from, or trying to connect with people, and this bot has kind of mocked them. And it might be something that people laugh and shrug off, or you might have actually made this person's day slightly sadder as a result. That is okay, there's lots of art that makes people sad. I just want you to at least have thought for these 3 minutes about this thing, and then you can continue to make nefarious bots that ruin films for you. Right, that's the law segment there. What about the future? What kind of bots would you be making? I've got 3 patterns that I want to suggest to you, 3 ways of building futuristic, better bots 2.0 is one. And this is kind of something I've already discussed before. So lots of bots focus on quantity over quality. A beautiful Photoshopped dice with tweets on them. And the thing is, and we've already discussed this, there's an element of serendipity to these bots. You're following them in the hope that you will find a gem at some point among all their rubbish. And this comes back to this idea of the sublime, because for some Twitter bots, the fact that there is loads of rubbish out there and that occasionally you find something great, that is actually the aesthetic. That's why you follow it. You follow it for that feeling of trudging through this infinite wilderness and then suddenly finding this beautiful thing that just comes together. And we've already seen examples where even if you know the gem is going to happen, you were expecting this, but it was still something that was satisfying to be there. So there's all kinds of complicated reasons why people follow these bots. And kind of for me, what's become the canonical example of first generation and second generation Twitter bots is Metaphor Minute, which is a bot by Darius has many tiny subversions on Twitter. And it tweets a random metaphor every 2 minutes because of Twitter rates. And it has a very repetitive format, so you can see a dog sled is a whipper, choosy yet finless. A bucketful is an oubliette, amateurish and sophic. So it's an X is a Y, P then Q. And it tweets, 535 people have one of these inserted into their timeline every 2 minutes, which I am impressed by because it was too much. Like I couldn't follow something like this. It's just the volume is too great. Now, for computational creativity, you might hear this phrase curation coefficient come up sometimes. And we're kind of often interested in, when you write a piece of software that makes something, what proportion of the things that it makes would you be willing to hand over to someone and say, I made something that made this? And if it's 1%, it means that your bot actually screws up more often than not, and you need to curate a lot of its work. And as that number gets bigger, you become more confident, until in theory you reach 100% curation. There is no curation required. Maybe I've got the number inverted. What was the, you want the curation coefficient to be very high? I guess it depends how is it interpreted. You want it to be really low. So you reach. You reach a point where it requires no curation. That's the point, in theory, where it's not it's good enough to stand on its own. And what I would put as the second generation Twitter bot to Darius's Metaphor Minute is Metaphor Magnet by our very own Tony Veal, which tweets about metaphoric relationships as a very funky description of it. It's got particular renderings, so what is a lawmaker but a legal lawbreaker? Which one are you? And it uses hashtags in a really interesting way. These are not hashtags destined to become trending worldwide. I don't think Tony's ever had that happen. But what they are is they're interesting tags. So I really like this one. Serene libraries containing books about devastating trauma, and it's prefixed by irony. So there's this contrast of serene and devastating and the idea of a calm library containing traumatic books. And these are great because they are typically extremely on point. They're occasionally genuinely thought-provoking. Irony, when the referees that monitor rewarding games decide punishing penalties. And tweeted at the right time, I could imagine this catching on during the middle of the World Cup or something. And so this has a really high success rate. These tweets come out less frequently, so you can see they're about 1 an hour when the bot's running. And you can see that Metaphor Magnet does not play dice with the universe. And this is not a very good metaphor, but I wanted to use this quote when I thought of it. To butcher Einstein. So Metaphor Magnet uses good source material, good knowledge, it curates itself, it tries to work out what metaphor is going to be good. And the result is a Twitter bot which hits way more than it misses. And never really misses to the same degree that Metaphor Minute does. And the crucial thing to point out here is that they are different bots with different goals. Darius is not trying to produce a bot which 100% of the time produces interesting metaphors. But this bot is, and it does. And these are interesting tweets. And so I want you to think about the contrast between these two bots in particular. And think about what the bot 2.0 version is of some of the bots that we've seen today. So yeah, both approaches are okay, but this week is really about the latter approach. That approach of a bot that has an understanding of itself, that can curate itself, can evaluate its own output. And in particular, can you imagine writing a companion to one of the bots that we've seen today that you really liked? Because a lot of them kind of spew out stuff without thinking about it. And it doesn't need to be a bot which just selects tweets that are good and retweets them. it can do something creative on top of that. It can repurpose the tweet in a new way. So instead of just selecting 2 headlines which are good, it could actually create an image which is a mocked-up newspaper. This is an incredibly bad mocked-up newspaper, it's always going to replace the headline. But Bill Gates fired as head coach of NY Red Bulls. And you can imagine, instead of using these, you could create these headlines from the corpora of famous people that we've got available to us today. But the idea is that it doesn't just have to be, curation and evaluation doesn't mean that you're not doing anything creative. That is something important. You're not generating anything new maybe, but you're doing a creative act in filtering these things out. So that's the first approach that I want you to think about, is looking at these bots that I've shown you today, thinking about the ways in which they're not very creative, and then trying to build a bot which takes it further, which takes the idea into the second generation, as it were. The second thing, standing on the output of giants. Bots pretty much are designed to exist in isolation. This is a bot that I've added as a joke about being isolated, but it's a bit like the hug thing, where it looks for people that are saying they feel alone right now, and it tells them someone over here wanted you to know that you're not alone, which is very sweet. It's something called the Learning Project. But anyway, bots tend to be on their own. And I've shown you a couple of examples where bots were built to be companions to other bots, or be linked to them in some way. And the thing with that is it gives you ready-made inspiration, and in some cases you know what you're dealing with. It gives you dependable kinds of data. One of the reasons why I chose Museum Bot is because it always tweeted things in a regular format in a way I could understand. And I had extra information. I had the title, I could follow that link if I wanted to. And the thing with this is that it allows us to start building up creative networks. Bots which are inputs and outputs, bots that relate to one another, bots that criticize one another, bots that curate one another. And it's nice as well. You get to meet people. This hashtag BotAlly or Botally is a hashtag that bot makers use. It's also an IRC channel on Freenode, and you should tweet about your bots using this hashtag later so people know about it, because I guarantee you they'll be interested. And if you make a bot about another bot, that person's probably going to be interested. So to give you an example of the kind of thing I mean, let's go back to 3-Course Meal, which was a bot I mentioned what probably feels like 4 years ago. I apologize if it does. Which tweeted 3-course meals, so starters, main courses, and desserts. So here are some bots that you can make that build on top of that, right? What if you made the Great British Bake Off? A bot that judges these meals as if they were on a reality TV show, gives scathing criticisms that you generate creatively. This is as dry as the Sahara Desert during the Prohibition. And maybe gives them a kind of score out of 10. Maybe you actually have some kind of intelligence that can work out how these ingredients work out together. So this is sort of a curator/comedy bot. What about House Bot Dough? This bot suggests wines to go with particular meals and then describes their flavour in particularly snooty and patronising ways. Or maybe, I'm not going to try and say this even though I named it, but the idea of a fancy French restaurant which generates names for each of these courses and descriptions. So, by which I mean, it's not just pear lemonade, but it's lightly crushed pears hand-picked by blind monks on a hill outside of Vienna, sautéed and then dipped in sugar wept on by nuns from whatever. And the idea is that you really dress up these descriptions of meals in intentionally over-the-top ways to appear comedic, perhaps. And the idea is that all of these bots can connect to one another, and then you generate 2 bots that go to this restaurant and write restaurant reviews, and then another bot that goes on a dinner date to this restaurant and spills portions of these things all over themselves, and then a laundry bot that has to clean them up and mixes up the laundry so it dresses people up in each other's clothes and so on and so forth. And right now, you have an opportunity that pretty much I don't think anyone in the world has, which is there are more people making Twitter bots in this room right now than there probably have been in any room that I can think of off the top of my head. Darius Casimir organises a great bot summit, most of which is conducted over Google Hangout. But right now, there's 30 people in this room making Twitter bots, and that's amazing. You have a chance to build a network of things. So make sure you talk to other teams this week and think about ways in which maybe your bots can work with each other, because you're going to be working from very similar corporate, very similar data sets. Tony and the organisers prepared rich sets of data, and you might find that another team is doing something perfect for interactions with your bot. So build a network, and then a month from now, keep in touch and update your bots and build new bots that talk to each other and link with one another. And finally, black box bots. So this is very simple. The reason I mentioned these image bots, which might have seemed kind of straightforward, is that they are functional. They have inputs and outputs. They're little processes dressed up as Twitter bots, which means that humans can use them, and also other bots can use them. And this is interesting because you're going to make creative Twitter bots that have lots of functions inside them. You might think about making a second bot that pulls out some of that functionality and makes it available for someone else to use. So if you are writing superhero stories and you have something that invents superheroes, why not pull that out as a functional Twitter bot where you can say, generate me a superhero that has this theme, and then it provides the superheroes to them. And suddenly you've turned a bit of code that you've written into a second bot that has inputs and outputs for people to use. And that's interesting because for people really interested in kind of perhaps more hardcore computational creativity theory, we could start writing bots which search for bots that can be used dynamically to create these processes out of nothing. So instead of forcing them to select from two bots, it just looks onto the Twitter and starts finding these bots that it can send messages to and get things in response, and dynamically build chains of processes. So the idea is that these bots take at messages and that triggers off some kind of thing, but you can also use hashtags, and I was kind of inspired by metaphor magnet here. Maybe these hashtags just kind of label what it did. So it says it used kind of edge enhancement and color black. But the idea, imagine if you could actually specify things that it did. So you give it a superhero and you say hashtag evil because you want it to be an evil superhero, and then hashtag flying because you want it to make sure that the superpower is the ability to fly or something. And these bots can still be independent, they can still tweet on their own as well as taking requests. But if you're going to do that, then definitely watch your rate limits, because it's very easy to go over and suddenly wander into band. Right, we're winding up. This is just a few last things that I want to say before I finish. And these are really, really practical things. These are not me being arty, philosophy, Twitter botty, new aesthetic. These are things that I really think that you should do. Number one, lock your bot down. Russians and Nazis are one thing, racial epithets are another. There's a great thing by Darius, it's called word filter. It's a pre-made blacklist of words that you probably don't want your bot to say. If you are in any way using text that you don't know where it came from or what it might contain, I highly recommend that you check this out because it will mean that you can lock it down and stop it from saying certain nasty things. Sign your work. There are a few bots we've seen today which don't sign their work. They are things like Stealth Mountain, Enjoy the Film, basically bots that you wouldn't necessarily want to put your name on. But please, in general, say, put your name in the description or something so that people can find out about you and find that you make these things. Be proud, like own your bots. And they can tell you if something's gone wrong. They can tell you if they want to know how you did something. So please, please, please sign your work. Plan for the long term. This is a very dull bot that I made that tweets offers on video games. That's not important. The important thing is that it hasn't tweeted anything since October the 12th. And I know it hasn't, and I have to fix it. But the problem is that I am especially lazy, and even though it wouldn't take much for me to fix it, I can't be bothered to SSH into my server, work out what the problem is, and fix it up. Think about what happens if your Twitter bot is going to run out of data. Think about what happens if the API changes, or if some of your data sources change, or if people start tweeting at you in an unusual format. All of these things will inevitably happen. Make sure that your bot is robust, that it's not just going to run out one day and stop tweeting, or at least that it's easy for you to change. If you're lazy like me, you may never change it. Consider open sourcing. I actually don't know what the organisers' thoughts are on this, or whether it was going to be encouraged anyway, but I just wanted to throw it in there. Bots are fascinating, and part of the thrill of these bots is that in a sense, all of them are feats. I had a category which I called feats, but all of them are like that. And they show you that something can be done, and people want to know how you did it. This is a bot that I discovered while doing research for this talk. It picks two random points, I believe in America, asks for Google directions between them, and then walks it in real time. So if it says walk east for 6 hours until you reach San Jose or whatever, it does it. And it periodically tweets photos from Google Street View to show you where it is. And I think that's adorable. And you're kind of following it in its trek across America, which is totally bizarre. But clearly you want to know how it does that. And this person has put the details on GitHub. I think open sourcing is great. I don't do it enough. No one does it enough. And know that. It's easy to feel guilty about it, but yeah, definitely consider doing it. And that's all I've got, but one more part before we end. Ending summary, as the film ends. It tweets the last sentence of plot summaries of films on Wikipedia. And this was my favourite one, so I added this to the last slide. And I found out yesterday, I didn't know this, I told you about this last night. This is actually from a Steven Seagal film, which I didn't realise. Yeah, there you go. Thank you very much. I apologise for how dense that was, but I'll be here obviously all week. Please ask me if you need anything, and thanks very much for listening.